polokala me masani o le malu I fale ia ua ia le tapareina leo tātou mo tātou ainga foi I le anga I antu lea I ni fale motu I le lumana ia langa tai leo le tu whaatsia leo tātou tiposi ia maisi mau mea malava e te tauana e si la fia a o tātou sāmi e tuai ia wala mafu anganan tātou anga I mai ai ni usala nei e le nei fiafi langa ngau toi tuli mai le whainga malanga le whalitua ia e mele palamo o le loan market ia holo iei foi ma le sunga ia Thomas le sunga leli ia Fale ia wala vai e nisio mata apu tātou te whasoa iei le nei fiafi e momo talavantu e mele malo le lanto ile e malo lanto ile tai e mai tau antu makua malo sia o ele whalitua I lo malanga antu I Samoa
Ia vaptai se umanu ia malo foi soifu manuia ia lau whaafonga Samoa ia whaatalo whaatu le mamalo le atunu o whaafonga mai ia sa maanga ia Samoa ua ma ia whaali fufi ia whai pepe moi ia masinga urkungu ai pepe oka se ia e sa uma kua pelesi uma mea uma sa nau etsa maanga ia skako kungu urkafau
Ja, wie hele no for len tu o tanto to e fisile fai fo le divai ngole fiafi a wala va hele to ino pa ia mal manol tanto to ja e fi fo le to fa tasimele sunga ya Thomas ja wa fo ile fa la loina o nisio va nga ton si le fia ilana to malana o nga fo va talavantu lo sunga Thomas ma lo le so fo manuia ja ma le langi ma mai le fo va ngole so Anton ja o le fa la va tu ma e mele o nai to titia antoa ja le tanto 1.5 len PCL sunga mai le vai aso nei se ia ule mai fo le vai aso malon so fo Thomas
Falava, thank you for having me again today.
Ja, malon so fo male langi mama le Thomas o la tanto te le me fa solo e ma fai ona e sa no pe fa ma telefone po ani vai nga o mai don silsila ile malon tu Thomas a o saudi antulea e foi se con karate foi lele ia o le fausi ina le o se fale.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So ole building contract is a very big document. There's a lot of different points inside a building contract, but the main points is number one, information about the scope of work. Ole akoinga kaluinga la fai to Fale, or a new build, or a renovation. Number two, or the start date and finish date, or the project. So whenever that's going to start and finish for your project, that should be in the contract. Number three, a price for work scheduled, which has to be detailed as possible to cover a number of scenarios. So le breakdown or the pricing or kokalake for every single point, or the ongaluenga la fai. Number four, who the parties are, who's involved. Po aikaka involved kong kalake, po osimi ma Bob, po uncle e pati ma Auntie Fale, or whoever it may be that's involved in the contract. A concise summary of description of work, very, very detailed description, just like the first point I told you before. Documents, some of the ones that need to be referred to is statement of work, which is description of work to be done, including the process or sourcing of materials and accessing the quality of the work. And then a lot of the other documents inside there is special or specific conditions, or may include or designs, materials, changing orders. So those are the main points if that makes sense. Does that make sense on your end, Emily?
Makes perfect sense. So or different buying components is the building contract. The being Samoa, Thomas, it's a big contract. It's a few pages.
Yeah.
Building a breakdown my Thomas some key parts. Lefa peanga le paunga vaenga lo kong kalaki ona e mana ia moles fa fonga le tunu. Le ala vase kong kalake etse sila yai etse tsaona malama I vaenga ese olea kong kalake awale pui na oe especially level pui na oe ina ia malama ma ia manino le leyo na vaenga ese
Malu fa tanya me le fa tanya Thomas e ile vaenga ta wale na sa do ye Thomas mo bi ai fo le lona fa la utelina o le fa te inga le to ina o sione ia masione fa le tua ya sina o le na fa ile fa talanoanga wa mai a mea umalava le na fa talanoina o sa uni lo ma sai ni lo mal kon karate a mata lo le nga wenga ai tau nu mai lo mal tama le nga li o sene wefa ngo foi Australia sa lo le o sene wefa li Thomas o lai pa o la ili mala sa mala foi ai al wa ko fa ya ko ya o eli Thomas ta Olha me wa nga fa nga me olha me wa ko pe ia ko nga me va pe ole le mal malama lo tamama lo tida ale wa umanga sangir ko ngalaki ole sa fa mal malama ina lo tulang e me finga so fa lava se si ale wa umanga nga sangir ko ngalaki ai ole fo ile va fa nga yo oe e ma ila to ya no sai nier kon karate e kanga le so fa lava pe kanga le fa lava vil te mi lo fo ya nga.
Thank you for the question. That's a very, very good question. And there's a few points to that. In terms of umalonga sailing ko kalake wa makalangal winga, the job has started. So there's not really you can't really also fa'alave after the contract has already been signed. So menga fa'ingol also sisi umanga sailing ko kalake. So it's already ready. We're ready to go. We're in the start line. We're already full steps ahead now. Fai wa saingi ko kalake e kaunga malamalama lelunga li'i before they sign the contract. So the advice there is seek legal advice if you need, but that's probably the most important part is always seek legal advice, to be honest. Never sign a contract pa kiri malamalama. They always get caught in these different points, especially when, for example, building exempt work, some contracts are below $30,000, so you don't need a building contract for that. But there should always be some sort of agreement in place. You can use a quotation as a form of agreement, but that's not a very good way of a relationship with society. You always have to make sure you seek legal advice before you start the building work. And malamalama de leia yakangaka all the different points involved in kokalake. Because some kokalake is only this thick, some kokalake is 30 pages thick. It all depends. I kele fo iku ia whaingoa whangale expensive English leko kongol kokalake. Whai kele malamalama ia, it's better to seek legal advice before you start any sort of construction work.
Se fautuanga molto ngata la le peo no fai antui foile o le wale le mai nei sa ula fai nga wenga alwa ko ki kilo fa mai se ke manga e fai peo la o muku kana I or fai ngoro muku ka ko inga malo maku o le sa fautuanga I to ngata fa pe
fai wo malamalama le runga li on their work that you've agreed upon before you started the work ai sa ule Sunday mai oska le fa mai le ai le o le menga ma o lo ka ma lo kinga yeah, from Makaloro san, from Malia Kia san. Umang silent ko kalake, malamalama lero mamalukinga in the scope of work detailed here. They sign the contract that you can't change. Afaya change le menga, yeah, makalor conversation linkako kalangwai last week and meleka ule variation. Because any sort of change is kung kalake, there always has to be a variation. Ay mga ongaya stopping and winga, then it becomes messy in terms of you and the contractor that's involved in the winga. So it's always good, make sure, get legal advice, understand what you're signing before you start the work. Don't just start the work and you say, oh, yeah, it's okay, I kind of understand. Always say 100%. Understand, go ahead, pull the trigger.
O le ala le taimi Thomas, e mawhai e o ele builder, ia pora ka muta foi. O na e whai antu le kon karante lea na saini, o ile aila, le la tau filo la I wa ova ke le whalavelave o e senge wefa lenga malanga mayu.
I mean, you can stop the agreement at any point if aga whailoa makang nga usose any sort of dispute. Any dispute in a contract, the best thing to do is always to sit down and talk first. Always negotiate makakaike involved in the agreement. Otherwise they want to go further and go through the court process. that's not a very good way of dealing with any sort of dispute. Most of the time, or clients it's not really lang sign contract. So it's the contractor's right all the time. If you want to change your mind and you as the son, Senewifa, is not involved in the signing, you have no legal right at all to say anything to us about the work that we've undertaken with our client. So yeah, it's up to the contractor and the client to have that discussion.
Emele emfeona sosoni maila tantum tampule wai atonue ele foule me voile le fa fonga ngal tantu utru ai sei kau fia i foile mele o le ye ke milenga fa kan ngoi ngai le kon karati ai sa voile le olanga sa wingi sa ka fa e penga sa we ai sa fa mai de manga ya me on ma kwale ngari me ure fa ye me le kon orga ko kon galaki mai na se o kon ngoa ko ka mu ko nga pe sa mor ka mu ko pe se Emily is so son tantum da.
Yeah, faftai se manu ia esa wai o isitenge tele lava le oso fa lava ona maybe o le tele fo yo na na. Ai mana ia le ponlenga mai Thomas, which for any contract po le a lava se konkalake se fainga fe ngainga o le a fai po le building po le your loan contract or a personal loan contract or a mortgage contract, so se ko ai ngā konkalake. E ta tauna ia le malama le o na o mea umalawa ia, why once se sign ia lo le konkalake lea, it is a binding contract. It becomes a legal document. So pela lena whamai Thomas, o ai lava parties lai po suafa ia lunga le contract. Those are the parties involved i le whainga le mea ai la se o sa whaalava. Thomas, there's room for negotiation.
Yes.
We can sit down, sila po le ale mele man na oi, but then ole a seeing a complication on ole a olo lai le tulanga lea, ole a very le contract lenga sangi momo. Ai pere tatu talanoanga le last week. So it's a tulanga lava yang ole a very le original contract lenga approve mai le bank. E tātou te toi o le bank e toi whai mai le approval. And it's a lelo na whaitetenga, e te le whailo na risk wa a whape o le wa a mata le building work. Ai tātou watu le bank i le mele toi mana na o suia decline mai le bank. Yeah, we're a little bit up in the limbo. So which means e yele right to le bank if mai o le ai. Ele mawhai mātou na accepting na le variation lea. Pea iani tūlanga e le fia le bank. So ele whapea Thomas is saying no ele mawhai ngā se variation. Ai te lelo nā whaina. It will have a big impact. Ele tātou ngā luenga, especially once wa umana saini le tātou contract. Especially for i wa a mata le tātou ngā luenga. Once you commence a building work, and you signed a contract, it's all parties involved. The builder and the contractors. So it's tawana malamalamba po oile so falava. Yeah, le fapeo le atu oile le latu malamalamba po atu langa po apui puinga le contract. And that's why pe mina my Thomas it's our seek legal advice. And whatever contract aile isainina, ai se tangata po le mamalu le tunu o whaafonga mai. A wana e sainia vanga na ua malama atotoa. Because once e sainia lor tato kakopengi, yeah, it is now a legal document. You are now agreeing o yailo malienga. I mea malava le tono le contract. So legal advice is very important.
Malu, vautangia Emily. Nei sau noa Thomas. O kon karakte fo i po ngā wenga I lalo mai o le tolus furu afe ia le tupe wha alue fo i le o no mo mia ia se malienga po kon karakte. Ai a sili antu lama le tolus furu afe. Ai o le whailunga o le awa whata ma le maasaninga fo i le. Ia le whapea mai lea o le kāmuntanga I le afo. I le urungari. Po le ainga fo. Ia, o le kako marienga le la fai. Ai fai ngutu foi le se pepa. la sa futuanga pe a fai fa tainga o le renovation ne la fai e le va le ono sfuluafe ma le fitu sfuluafe e mo o mia le use con karate.
Thank you for the question. Last week, whakwa umarikako show and I got a phone call from someone right after the show, and they asked me some advice, and I told them, you need to still seek legal advice. But they went ahead and started their project. Advice o le contractor po le ka muka lenga ngalaku yala ko.
Yeah.
It was also a referral. So we le trust whaanga le inga whapea. Oi, refer mai e mako inga re idea wingala we can trust him. Umai whuranga ruenga. Ia, ele le lenga ruenga si inga. And walu le ima maabir kupe se turo iranga. So it's very important that you get a contract in place, especially with those figures, anything over $30,000 or even under $30,000. It doesn't matter. You should have an agreement between both parties at any given point. Inga po le scope of work involved or le me cover il kupere la avaku ya la ko. So yes, the advice would be 100%. Just because for my build is very good, don't worry, you can trust him. At the end of the day, or that's your savings, or you've saved a long time for, or investment. So all that money, you got to protect your money, protect your investment, and make sure you get yourself a contract in place.
Lele Malu fa tang yo ia wai fio lo loanga I ka poi e so I fu tono New Zealand Thomas ma Emil ia o fio lo fu ni fa mtalanga wo o mai le tanto wala le ia anga ile ia ila to ie fu to inga wenga ya lo wa afanga wenga fiu so er ka mut ia pe fa pipi ia tu le mukuka fa pi le sink ai umangi ole afa sink ai le a to mai le sink ia ai ta ua telela ia le fai o se kon karate le ina ia ile suafa o le e ana ngalwe markanga ka kongwale na te ia fa tino ina ngalwe nga fu le mole anga iluma le Thomas a fai o le wa silsila le a inga fu le fa tawina le o se fale a o laimo o mia ia le toi fa le ia po o le lipe ina o le fale o le ala u fautuanga ia ina a inga ia fa mole.
Thank you for the question. The first thing you need to do before you even buy a house or consider buying a house is get yourself a building report. The building report is done by licensed practitioners or LBPs who will give you that building report. For me, your company, we don't do building reports. There's a lot of time. Do the research, do everything, do the testing to give you that detailed report, just like a building contract. Building report is very detailed for all defects or the fale, things high risk, low risk, and also in terms of when you have the building report, it's a lot easier for you to deal with the bank as well, because the bank looks at building reports and documentation from the licensed builder. Yes, so building report, number one. That's the first thing you need to do.
Nele Malu fa tai ai fa fefo ilele I atonu stasilo vaenga le na tatu talno ina le vaia sole atonu le tai in ile fale tu fo ia e mele foile ya ole wa ile fale motu ya wa silsila le ainga fo ilele ile to fa fo wina le ole umukuka ya po le situlanga fo ilele ole fale tai le fo tuanga ole me tau fo momo.
So for any sort of kitchen and bathroom renovations, it's always best to consult not your uncle or your cousin or your auntie. You need to consult a building practitioner all the time. For any advice apart from an architect or a licensed practitioner. The reason why is because there's a lot of gray areas building code and for the building consent process as well. So you need to understand there's some things that we call exempt building work. Fale kitchen, there's a few areas where you can for your kitchen and there's some areas where you can't. So you need to talk to someone because there's a lot of information involved with that. So you need to talk to a licensed building practitioner for information regarding that. Also, two, please go read the council website. A lot of our people is they just talk to this guy and they go, yep, okay, we follow your advice. But there's also information freely available to you online. Simple, then call someone else, or someone that can read the information and translate kako makua to make sure they understand everything from the council website. If it's not from the council website, it's not true. So it's very important that you read the information clearly. It's all there. It's broken down for you bit by bit. So you just need to read the information. If you found someone who's a referral and you trust this person, like someone like me you can trust, then I can give you that information freely as well, where I print out the documentation and I bring it with me to show you. So I say, this is from council. This is what you can and cannot do. And these are the areas of the kitchen you can renovate and the bathroom you can renovate. And these are the areas that you can't and require building consent.
Malu sao no Thomas o lena e sao no bai e te tau na le sene ina le tangata ka muta
Yes.
E va ve fer ko inga ka foi le o yeisa na va ve fer na mauti no e tangata ia po ai nga e fio fausi ina pe to fa le ia mu ku ka ma fa le ta ele ma po le ala me fio fa le ona le al watu le tangata le na ta o le anko po le anti fa ma yo le mo kwa le ia ai le lo ku so lai le brai o le mele fenga wenga ia nga wa kulola ia le fa e fonga fale ongo le me le fale lenga ma ko foi se fulu lua fonga fale le fale le ki fenga wenga ke mringi ia ai fa pe fe ona fa mautino o le kanga kale o la isenge le walwatu.
Thank you for the question. We have license numbers. All of us LBP, we all have ID cards as well with our picture, male license number, and it also shows the expiry date of lo. So some people from my I've been licensed. Make sure you check for expire license ko inga. Ke wa laku e failo fale e fa mai license, yes, le ilang LBP number, but it's expired. So you need to make sure and you can also use the LBP site. Me fainga search with the number. Or his full name. So always make sure you get some sort of document like a license from him or something that you have his information so that you can look him up and do your due diligence or your research on the person. Always do your research before you agree to anything.
Malu
100%.
Malu vauti e se le tau o le vaenga le e wan tantu te leo ye Samoa ia tonu fo la wa anga i lunga ia le whaunga i no tantu IDs ia ma verifications for i Samoa ia mo le au ka muta mo le au whaifale le nei vai tau o le soifanga o le amatanga lava o le tantu tananga le vai so le na e Samoa ia Tom. O le tūlanga foi lele a whaionei sila so se ngā wenga. E tā ua te lele upule a whaperitani o le budget. A wā leise budget. O lono winga e le mawhaiona tanto o i whaantau mai i materials ma tūlanga ua whapea.
Yes.
O lono winga la o i le ma whana i tele. I le lua mawhutanga ma le whalitua. Ia e mele a Thomas.
Yes. Yes, it's very important, and I'm sure Emily agrees on that front as well. That a budget, it's very important to determine your budget before you start any building works. And also, like as discussed last week, e kaunga ye low budget, e malmeleka or contingency. So always have, personally, I always tell the clients that I work with. If you have anywhere between 20 to 30%, then you are very, very happy and cover everything that you're going to do in your building works. If you only have 10%, and you have 10%, it won't cover your extras. So always have a little bit of a buffer on top. It doesn't mean I use my contingency. Sometimes Ole alame ko koe lo contingency. I don't know the relationship between the client and the Emile maua ngā lau Ford Ranger lo contingency, but that's between you and Emile, not between us.
Ya tono se tasi lau vaenga matala no e malfaltu ya Emile se tasi vai aso. Ya ua whainei le fale ua mana ia ya o la e ile ava no foi le ono fata wela mal Ford Ranger pe ona e pe ona sa no ina. O lo winga la e le o le pini la o ele sa o tonu ile Ford Ranger. Ya le vala e Emile male client ja.
Yes, ole va Emile mal client. Sorry, le sawe mal fu ai le ma wor fu ai la Ford Ranger. That one you have to buy on your own.
Malo, Emile, foi ona so di mai le tanto mta pula wa o le wa fenga I tonu wa male tulanga foi le paketi le pe ona amata mai le ri por kala me awana va fa la ulo ina le tanto o tudo. Ya o fa tal ronga pe ona yai. Ya ai se ya we seen a preview like titi foi le mo le sile fie ila tu yo le futo ma futo mai le dei vai yeso.
Te se manu, Malo Thomas, mo te leana I manatu mana I a le tau wha malama le mamalo le tunu. Ai o le tā ua o le mele o le budget. Pe o le na tātou tala noa I le last week, e ta tau lava ona whailau pre-approval mo le whaafonga anga le atunu. A whaapeu yeise ma faufaunga po se manatu o le a yeise ngā luenga fie whaia. E tā ua te le tātou nonofo I lalo ma tilo. Well, le ase amount tātou te tilo e pre-approve mai le bank. Well, o le pre-approval, le whape o le awha o ngā uma le amount. I usually would recommend I a inga, le mamalu le tunu or all my clients, we can go to the bank for a pre-approval for a much higher amount. O na o le leo le tūlanga leo le pre-approval higher amount. Au mai le kako building contract o leila lo mai o le amount lea. E se whaere kako koe o le bank back and forth. O la foi la wai ele tato buffer I tutonu I. So first, it's a ua te lele make sure we have a pre-approval in place. O le second, ele whape o le awha o ngā uma lea. So we now have an opportunity e whai ele kako pākeki. That is realistic to our affordability. Well, let's see tūlanga e mana ia le excitement of let's go top end, or the kako flash renovation or whatever. But let's see tūlanga where I come in, ia kako pakeki lea. Now let's have a look at the reality of pe tātou te ngā whatia on the manage le kako budget lea going forward. Pea uma le tātou whale. Nei te ua uma e na whau le tātou whale. Ua maa ngai le flash. Yeah, wale mo ia ile sile stress. So we want to make sure tato to eliminate ne uma papea. So yes, we have pre-approval for a higher amount, but I always look at, okay, let's look at a budget. Realistically, let's look at if it's manageable. Look at the repayments might be higher, then that could be maybe we need to lower or change some things within the kako scope of the building project. So it's ele me pe mele for my Thomas tell me it's on fatala no malama but a budget is so important and make sure o se budget e tato tenga fatia a wanya stress se ke walu lunga koko le kai o langa so
Malo sound Emily back to you Thomas Fiona e sound no si fa malama fa la we telele wing o le mele ta o le code of compliance fa
Okay, code of compliance is when we finish the work and we have everything in order for us to hand over to council. So the code of compliance, or the tikanga from council to say, yes, this home is healthy. Yes, this home has been built to the building code and to the building standard. Okay, and we've passed everything. So that means our house is ready to sell, ready to go, ready for you to live in, and we've gotten the big ticks from council. That's what code of compliance is. And we've been compliant with all the requirements of the building code.
Ova engala ia Thomas e ono popole ia le ainga le ana nga luenga po le vaenga le e te tauna nga luenga ia le ka muta po le faufale.
ole au Fale. They need to make sure and manage Fale everything throughout the process or the building. So once the building is complete, a lot of the time you can, as the owner, manage this process. A lot of the time you can. So you don't have to pay the construction company or the management company. It's a large all your documentation. But there's a lot of work involved with that. So whenever we come in, us as the building contractor, we always recommend to our clients that we manage this process for you, because there's a lot of people involved. Documentation from the electrician, or the drain layer, or the painter, or the tiler. There's a lot of different people involved in the construction phase. And you need to get all the valid documentation to hand over to council to get the sign-off from them. Samoa Law Code of Compliance, yeah, everyone's happy.
Malu vau Thomas. Ole te leo ole manole tu una malanga mai Samoa. Anto va ai foi le fausi no le Fale Samoa. Ava pe ola uka muka le foi le Fale. Ole uka muka nga ye kongo mal foi le kise, nga ye mal palamba. Ye uma me uma ye tu tonu yo ke le lope yingi la sing. Ava tu sala nga wenga le ole fa tino foi le tu tonu ni usila. O le ala fa tau tai la sunga malau company ia la ngal wenga le o ala ngi vaenga fo ie e no popole ye ainga pe o le mea o le wama kwa se no pasene le tau va fe lo ai malau palama malau fo ile tise po ala vai si me e mo mi to no ngal wenga si ainga le o sa uni fa.
Thank you for the question. Yeah. So in Samoa, it's a little bit different for many reasons. Nangaokaku Kanaka, a lot of our people were at the same time, I'm not going to discredit the skills of our people back home, because back home so there is a lot of skill there from our people. It's just the only difference when they come over from Samoa is certification to get certified in New Zealand. Like I said in the previous interview last week, a lot of our people, the only difference is they just need to understand regulations on New Zealand, understand your codes on New Zealand for them to get qualified. Now with us, team, everyone in my team is certified, right from the builder to the plumber to the electrician. So everything that we do is certified, and it's recognized as well. We follow all the building code and building act as well. So everything we give you is going to get signed off with council. So you can rest assured that we're going to give you that guarantee at the end of the job.
Lele Malu vau tai Thomas Antonu ya ole wa marino male tele vainga ye a ona silfia le tantu tru so se ngal wenga la vamos so se meta tu te faia e ye le tulanga fo ile o aso wale le o aso fo ya we le tulanga fo ile le tau fa le ton e ye ini fa fita uli wala vastas ya e ini fa fita uli na fenga ye ma oi ya mala o nanga fo ile ini ngal wenga wo tuna yatu atu no luta manatua na e famile mas men Fale ton ai pe ye fo inicio fa tata inga oni Fale ton e ono fenga ye ile vale o le builder e ma inga ye fa ya lan tungalwa.
In terms of that question, do you mean is Fale kongu in the work, or Fale kongu in the agreement between the builder and the client?
Ngalwenga work.
Okay, in the work. Okay. Yes, there's always problems in any job that you do, and there's always solutions to every problem. But a lot of the time, one of the time is when we had the existing service plan or service plan or services, or paipa rani lunga o le section. So we got the document from the client. We had a look at it and we said, okay, then we started drilling. e whai le whaingo le tek, po le tek or kau a inga le, at the back of the house.
Yeah.
E whai papa kiu, ma whai pāki o le New Year. And then we drilled into one of the pipes. That was one of the issues that we faced. We looked at the service plan, we marked it out, but e se are mereng whamaere me le plan, e se mere le paipa lea. So, or kamala la lenga whai le paipa the first time. Yeah. Po ovangi whangu, po ovangi ngumbela, kamareng whai mua. O se se me o makare paipa.
Hey.
So, there's some things happen like that. When that happened, obviously, it's unforeseen. Mere kau or contingency. Because we don't know. We don't know. We drilled the hole, and then all of a sudden, wapa malevai, yeah. Pepo femmo wasa malevai there, yeah. And then we had a look, yeah, the pipe the main low drill into the main, yeah. So then we had to fix the issue.
Oi le pa u ye le costo le vaenga le wai ele se fonta o ele se fonta le ai.
Well, that's the part that we have to come to an agreement by. Normally, between me and my client, for unforeseen things like that, normally we have a discussion, and most of the time in the past, I've always gone 50-50 with the client because it's half our fault, half their old contractor's fault, because we didn't know where the pipe was. We followed the plan, and it's hard for us to have a look at these areas. We also suggest to the client, before we do any work, do you want to get someone in if angale x-ray le area lea? But the client will either say yes. If they say yes, perfect. They have to pay for the x-ray so that we know exactly where the pipes are or services. But if they say no, then we can't carry that risk because we've already given the advice to the client prior to us starting the work.
Malu whautai. Olono winga la. Ele po se te mi voi le whangai o i mea umalawa ia ai le I sainia le kon karante atoms.
No, Lea, ele po se te. If you're going to do anything to do with construction, or like advice all the time, kakangaka, take your time. Take your time with the process. Follow the right steps. Ele ke ia halu from number 1 to number 5. You always go number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Never skip the process. Always follow the process. Make sure you do your due diligence, understand the process involved. And sometimes, most of the time, cheap is not always better. Sometimes you pay for the skills that you get. So sometimes other people are a little bit more expensive, but the advice is worth the money. So the advice would be always seek the right information, seek legal advice, number 1, seek the right information and understand everything. And look around, talk to many different people. I would just talk to one guy and then say, yep, this is the one. Talk to many different people, understand different processes, my involvement. So you can layer the process for building.
Malu whautai Thomas Antonio le wamanino le whaafonga angal tātou tanu. Ia ele pu fo ele taimi lea talu ona amatalia fo ila o i tautua. O le utama tua fo i maila vai aso na tene. O le na e sauno. Wa i tue fo i mailava i meia residential buildings. O na olo fia so swani fo i lele ili pa ia malo le tātou tanu. A faila le watangi atu stoi ina masilo matua fo ile le ngal wenga pe luas fun montup ya fa pe atu stoi ina o simi ya o eli Thomas se wakari Thomas se mari mai nga ole luas fulwa fe mele kongole le wa mari mai le pe e Moses so swani fa pe ke ro fa ko le mera a mini discount to the giki.
Okay, thank you for the question. It all depends on the work that we're about to do. It's you can't say it's not going to happen. Tama, mo le tama. E pu wale kanga la usan la lus wafi. My Fale's company la usan at the end of the project. So my advice to the tama would be keep saving until you're ready to take on the project. we can't always have what we want, but we can save towards what we want. So if you want the big house, you want the big mansion that you want, then save the money until you're ready. Never ever do a project unless you understand all the costs involved, with all the services involved. For example, for the kitchen, for the bathroom, ele o se kasis kangaka involved in the kitchen and the bathroom. E ka kangaka I mi uma lako the price anywhere between korus fulu, $40,000, $50,000 for a bathroom renovation. Pero ko inga. That's because ole palama, ole electrician, ole Tyler, everyone involved is all in this little area. So make sure get on all the costs involved. I laku sisia oe po si kamare sa mo ya uskari por kamare sa mo sa mo famaya oe. I want to build my bathroom and I only have $10,000 if I made kama. Okay, no problem. You say please go away. As a mengai mawai oe, and then everything you lose your money in the process.
Malu va taya Thomas Esele mantango fia foi lelo le fa so le divang le fiaf atono le wala mala fai u ia le tanto fa talanga emele ya se so so ni mai le tolunga ina le tanto polka lame le ni fiaf mal le sunga ya Thomas
mana ia fa tse manu fa tse foi Thomas o le mana ia le o fautuanga fa be o lo mo le mamalu fa fonga mai e mana ia lava lo tala noi tangata who are experts in their field. Mana ia tala Thomas le fa mai fa pe o ko pa ke kila ia na le luas fulua fe. Yeah. Ile tau ia because I know from the lending or the banking point of view, or the cost of building had gone up to about over 30% and more. So fa pe o le sila facing aluenga in renovations or a new build. It's for iona tato manatua. Ia wahalu lunga the cost of building materials. So me umbape mana ia len fa amala malama me Thomas ia kusape ngau le bathroom. E ko kele ia tangata ese ia or electrician or cost umalava ia absorb umalava into ile building contract layer on for example le tulanga le ia stung ia Thomas ia na they don't work for free. So I think ole mana ia la le fa sala noa ia mala mai pe ai sa ai un tonta o no le tele ona vaenga ese include umala vetsonu I ai mana ia ne fiafi so ole mana ia ole fa ala tele ina ole tato malama pe fa ve fe ona tato soani tato lesi tangata anu Samoa so we can all move ahead. So lesi, and we share our expertise in our own field. So, Malu, so Malu.
Malu, so no, yeah, I lay into want to away contact details. Emily Thomas, Mulian Tulanga Fab to tell the divine or if you feel sunga. Yeah, Malay tan to Nangafoi, away, little fight for Malamina, little vang and Tawan Silphia little. Yeah, why, or the Mele, way, Lenivang or if you should. Ya to fa pe ka wala me le renovation ya nga o singa nga ngai la papa vo ye fa popo ye ko so mai ngai waya ya mai ngai ya mo me wall so ye fa ko ai le ila te le ava ngai Thomas e ma fa yona to fa ma to mai ya wala me fa yona so ta ye toilet tanto tro wa te lo e to tele imato o le foka ka mala ma ko ngai sime e ye fo inicio ai ia lenga feanga ye mala au ka poenga wa umanga ma ku ye kupi ia lawa ku sa alu aluanga fa mala malanga ku le extension ia mala papa fo inga fa ku ku lunga au ka ia la ma lili ila ingal terminate Thomas ile ma wantu ia le atu angor ngal wenga le na mali ye ia masito ina masilo matu.
Yes. Thank you so much, Seman. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you both. The reason why I came back to the residential side is so that our people, especially our people, kako tato tangata, e malama le lei me leo le building and construction. So if anyone wants to get a hold of me on, you can get a hold of me on 021 558 364. And that's buildersblueprint.co.nz is my website, and Mawai Waka, and you can see me on there in my nice videos. Or you can get a hold of me on my email on thomask@buildersblueprint.co.nz.
Malu Valentine Thomas, ja, Emily, ja, zou nou jij. Mai dan tu numero telefonia before ia email to no leo la to tele manto ia la so ta ia to fo ia waile ma fa na mako wo va ve o ya Thomas ia pe ale afia o il fo tu va mole email.
Yeah, pa malo se umano ia malo foi Thomas mo po kala melne ia pa malo foi Samoa mo leva noi sa tu te tala noi nei mata upu taua ia maua o le telefonio le o lua fitu Valu tolu fitu, valu fa, valu o, or email me on emile.palamo@loanmarket.co.nz. Yeah, manuia le fiafi.
Ja, van pena i ona fai ia na Samoa le tolunga na le tanto polkalame o le Malu i Fale pe ona e mai moma e fa fonga mai ai le nei fo i vaenga le fiafi o le tua ia emele o le olua fitu valu tolu fitu valu fa valu o lua fitu valu tolu fitu valu fa valu o ia po le sunga ia Thomas o le Builders Blueprint New Zealand e le olua tasi 5 valu tolu ona fa olua tasi 5 valu tolu ona fa manatua o le mea kau loan ia ma le mea kau fale e le se su e ngā kala ia po ngisi a kūlanga le ma anofia ngi ki fu e masau mui ma oe ia e le ia vili e ma kou leo leo ia ongo le over ngā meo le ifalada se iau lia le solulu o le vai e so fau manuia le fiafio le solulu.